Hello, my name is JG Francoeur, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Visture Property Group, which is a local property group and property management company here in Peterborough, Ontario. We serve Peterborough, Lindsay, Orillia, Huntsville, and we own properties in all of those cities, plus Hamilton, plus Calgary, Alberta. And the game plan today is not so much to speak about Visture Property Group, but more so to speak about how you guys can better serve investors and how you can kind of educate you and give you some really, I guess, arm you with incredible data trends for you to better serve investors. Because, as you guys all have seen, Peterborough is attracting a lot of outside capital. A lot of people either want to put their money to work in Peterborough or just a lot of people moving to Peterborough. And when I say Peterborough, I'm talking about Peterborough, Lindsay, Kawarthas, the whole region. So, So a little bit about me, just real quick, just so we get familiar with each other. I've been an entrepreneur for the last 20 years. I built and sold 6 different companies in the last 20 years. My last company was in 14 different countries. And I documented my entire entrepreneurial career in a book called Messy Manager. And I give away that book for free now. I used to sell it in 14 countries. Now I give it away for free. So if you want a free copy of that book, just go to messymanager.com and you can get a free copy. And about 10 years ago, through the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur, and you guys know, because you're all entrepreneurs, as real estate professionals, that's what you are. You're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur. You know the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. So I knew I wanted to kind of solidify my financial future, and I decided on real estate investing. So I started learning everything I could about real estate investing, and I started a company called Visture Property Group, which was essentially for the sole purpose of building up a quote unquote retirement plan for myself when it first started. And then it's kind of grown way beyond that. But somewhere along the way, probably about 5 years after we started, we realized that we were having a really hard time with property management. We had millions and millions and millions of dollars of real estate, but we were having really a hard time with property management. So we decided, well, we can't seem to find anyone who's going to manage properties our way. And we can't seem to find people who focus their attention on, single family properties, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. Most property management companies want the big condos. They want the big multifamilies. That wasn't our game. We were in the small single family kind of space. So then we launched a new division to our company called Visture Property Group and Visture Property Management. And that's how we expanded into the management space. At first, it was just to manage our own properties, and then it quickly became a thing where everyone was like, hey, you guys are doing a great job for yourselves. Can you do it for me? And then we built out a company called Visture Property Management on top of that. So just a little bit of background on kind of me and Visture Property Group. And you may have heard of us. You may not have heard of us. We grow very, very organically. We don't advertise out there, but we grow very, very organically through the community, and we serve real estate investors in those communities we're in. So welcome to this presentation. I do a lot of public speaking, so I'm very, very happy with answering questions on the fly. I got the chat here on the fly. I'll do a Q&A after, so I'm happy to help any way I possibly can. And I've known Pat for several years now, actually, which is how we kind of got together and organize this today, this last minute. Hey, JG, how do you, he asked me this question at lunch the other day. He says, JG, do you believe in free speech? And I said, of course, Pat, I think it's important. We need free speech. He says, great. We're going to get you to speak at our meeting, but we're not going to pay you anything. So if you believe in free speech, you should do it for free, which I'm happy to do. So, and by the way, my jokes do not get any better. If anything, they only get better with either some whiskey or some wine. Then I get a little bit funny after that. But other than that, not so much. Dad jokes only around here. So my goal for you, all of you listening to this, whether on recording or whether live, my goal is to give you the tools to sell more real estate. Plain simple, bottom line. That's what's important to you. You really don't give a crap about property management unless it's to help your own customers. You're here because you want to learn how to sell more real estate. That's what you do. That's how you make a living. And that's how you're going to serve your customers. So I've kind of geared this whole presentation, which is going to be somewhere between 45 to 60 minutes, on giving you those tools, but looking at it purely from an investor perspective. So everyone who's kind of here, and some of you I've met and some of you I haven't met before, but I want you to put on your glasses called real estate investors, because this is going to be very different. You're not going to be thinking about selling a home to someone as their house. You're selling a piece of real estate, a piece of property for someone's investment. And that requires a whole different thinking from your perspective as well as a great agent. My goal for investors is to help them stop the grind and regain their time. That's what I want for real estate investors, because too many of them are doing the wrong things. Too many investors put their absolute life savings into real estate. And you know what? Even though real estate is the most incredible investment out there beyond anything else, and I've done them all, and real estate is by far the best, if you don't do it right, you won't get the right results. So my goal for real estate investors who work with Visture Property Group is to stop the grind and regain their time, because they're often not doing the right things. So why should people invest in real estate? I think I want to give everyone the full narrative, and anyone can feel free to send a message in the chat at any time, ask a question, and I'll answer it on the fly. It's not a problem. But I think we have to start by answering the question, why should people invest in real estate? When someone comes to you and they say, and I'm just going to pick people that I see on my screen here. So they say, Tara, I'm thinking about buying a property in Peterborough. You know, what do you think? That's often a question that comes up. You know, they're looking for your advice. They're looking for your counsel. And I think it's important to start with why real estate makes so much sense in our country. The first thing is, and it's very important to realize, is that inflation of assets, specifically real estate, will always outpace income growth. This is an actual chart. And by the way, I'm going to give you my slides as well after this presentation. And you can feel free to steal anything that I say, because the odds are I stole it from someone else. So feel free to steal anything to help you, with your customers. But asset inflation will always outpace income growth. This is an actual chart from 1969 all the way up to 2019 of house prices versus income growth. You can see the income growth line is just steady as she goes, a couple points every single year, whereas house prices are just astronomical. Now, that's this chart stops in 2019. Imagine if we kept it going. We'll take a look at this. This is actually what is the projected line up until 2055. The appreciation is going to continue more and more and more. These are GTA figures in general on an aggregate. But the point remains, which is people cannot save their way to financial freedom. People cannot save their way to financial independence. They have to put their money to work. They have to have their money working harder for it than they work for it. And that's a really, really key factor. And that's often what kind of cues people into, maybe I should look into real estate. Maybe I should consider this thing called real estate, but typically they're scared. And, people invest their life savings into real estate. They're not investing. It's not like cryptocurrency here where you're investing $500 and you're hoping to make 5 million. People are investing hundreds of thousands of dollars, everything they have. So rightfully so, they're scared, they're afraid. They're kind of like, is this a good idea? So let me give you now that we know why real estate is a good idea, let me give you a couple trends and a couple figures to show you and to help you give comfort to your clients to know that, listen, real estate, A, is a phenomenal investment. B, it has had a big run up. And one of the biggest challenges agents deal with, all of you here listening, is people think, I missed it. I missed the run. If I would have just bought in 2019, if I would have just bought in 2020, I missed all that appreciation, because they're always looking retrospectively. Well, folks, let me tell you this, that it is going nothing but in the same direction that it has been going. And I'll tell you why. And it's the fundamentals of supply and demand. In Canada, we have a fundamental supply issue. Canada has the lowest housing units per 1,000 residents in the G7. So this is how many housing units we have per 1,000 residents. So you can see Canada's at the very bottom of that chart. And here's the number that's really you're gonna love, which is just in order for us to hit that red line, just for us to get to where we should be, we actually need 1.8 million new houses built on top of the $286,000 to $300,000 300,000 homes we build every single year. That's 1.8 above. Let me ask you this right now. Do you think that we can get our crap together to do this? Yes or no? No, the answer is no. It will not happen. With all the different municipalities and the way our governments are organized, there is no way. And if you guys have ever done development, and as at Visture Property Group, we are developers, we do develop all the time. It is so difficult to get building permits, to get through zoning, to get through all this stuff, that there is no way supply is going to change in a very meaningful way, despite the crap that Justin Trudeau and every other politician tells you on TV. Okay. And that's really important to know. The other thing is that's just from a new development perspective. Look at it from a supply perspective of average MLS inventory. Look at this trend of how it's been going down and down and down from 2015, starting at 244,000 listings and continually dropping every single year. And now in 2021, it's actually half of where it was just in 2015. Like, I'm not going back here to 1985. Right? I'm talking about just from 2015. So there's a constant push in this country, more demand. We are bringing in right now, our country's bringing in, they're planning on bringing in 400,000 immigrants every single year, which we need. We absolutely need. There's no doubt our country cannot survive without immigration. But the point is this, people are coming to this country in bigger numbers than they ever have before. We're not having as many babies, but that's okay because the immigration is feeding it. But the supply is just not there. And we are becoming, and we will continue, and Pat and I have had these conversations before, our country in general is actually very young, as you know. You know, our country is only a couple hundred years old, whereas Europe is a couple thousand years old, right? You look at, you know, some parts of Europe are several thousand years old. The point is this, they are much more of a mature real estate market than we are. And you will notice that they are all in Europe and in more mature countries, they are nations of renters. And here in Canada and US, North America, we've been primarily a nation of buyers and homeowners, but we're quickly heading towards a nation of renters. This is a good thing for real estate investors. This is not a scary thing. This is a good thing. This is your insurance policy as a real estate investor. In the UK, 50% of the market is renters, 60%. In other parts of Europe, 60% is renters. In Canada, only 35% is renters. And 3 years ago, it was 31% are renters, meaning 69% were purchasers. So that's how fast we're moving towards becoming a nation of renters. And again, I'm speaking to you to help you arm your real estate investor customers, people that are calling you saying, hey, I want to buy a rental. I think I want to buy this as an investment. What do you think? This is their insurance policy in my view. So that's number one, why real estate's a good idea. And number two, why it's not going to change. Okay. But now we have to answer the third question, which is what drives real estate investments? And as agents, you know, you are largely driven by supply and demand. What happens in a marketplace with regards to supply and demand is what typically feeds pricing, right? Somebody, and just look at COVID, you know, the price of certain asset types called single family homes with bigger yards, called lots in the country. You know, these things have gone up astronomically since COVID because those became in high demand and there just wasn't enough supply. But that's what drives a market for purchasers. But you got to ask yourself the question, what drives a market for renters and what drives a market for real estate investors, which is very different. So here's a magic formula. Now, this formula comes from the Real Estate Investment Network. I'm a part of that company. I'm the chief growth officer of that company, and we've educated 185,000 real estate investors in the last 29 years. We've been around for 29 years. And this is actually from our research and everything we've done, and we have a full research team. This is actually what drives the real estate market from an investment perspective. So it all starts with the gross domestic product of that local region. Then you got to look at the employment of that particular region. Then you got to look at the population growth of that particular region. You guys can see my screen, right? Give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen. Okay, good, thanks. I did a presentation the other day to a group in Calgary, and I was 30 minutes through, and they said, JG, are we supposed to be seeing your screen right now? Because we're not. So I'm kind of paranoid now. So I'm glad you could see it. So those three bottom, the green section there, those are called economic fundamentals. And those are the three driving forces of a real estate market. Those three driving forces will impact your rental market, which is your rental demand, your vacancy, and your rents. And once those things are impacted from a real estate investment perspective, not a purchasing perspective, then your property demand is going to change and your property prices are going to increase. That happens on the way up. It also happens on the way down. So as a real estate investor, what we teach real estate investors is it's actually pretty simple. You don't have to be like a rocket scientist to invest in real estate. You just got to go look at the fundamentals and see if these three things are being driven higher, or if these three things, the bottom things, gross domestic product, employment, and population, are they being driven lower? Okay. Now, and this is actually here in Peterborough, just so you guys know, we have growth in all three areas and very strong growth recently in all three areas. Up until, and this is really fascinating, up until 2013, 2014, we actually were pretty flat. We were flat GDP, flat employment, and relatively flat growth in population. And that's why our market, from a real estate investment perspective, was not having big appreciations. It was like steady as she go market, but you weren't seeing the big appreciations you're seeing now. Then in 2015, it started changing. And if you go back and look at the data, you'll see how our GDP started increasing a lot. Employment started increasing a lot. Population started increasing a lot more. And as a result of this more aggressive growth, and then COVID on top of that, you've been seeing the crazy growth we've had in the last 5-6 years here in Peterborough and surrounding areas as well. By the way, this formula here works everywhere. And it's also, if you're taking notes, I see a lot of you guys are taking notes, which I think is super awesome, that write this down from a real estate investing perspective. Real estate is regional. What happens in Hamilton, Ontario has very little bearing on Peterborough. What happens in Calgary, Alberta has no bearing in Ontario. And and I'll tell you why that's so important in a second when I get to the confusion, but real estate markets are regional, and you just have to go look at what drives those real estate markets, and it's those three things: GDP, employment, population growth. Okay. Now, from our perspective, and what we would teach real estate investors day in and day out, and this is really awesome for you guys as agents, because this is where your customers get cold feet. This is where your customers get wishy-washy. This is where your customers, like, you're showing them great properties, they make total sense on paper, and you're like, why are they not pulling the trigger? I'm confused. What is wrong with these people? That's because they get confused, and I'll tell you why they get confused. It's because they're listening too much to the news, and the news is feeding them headlines. Just look at these three articles that you have on your screen. Scotiabank cuts worst case scenario forecast for Canadian real estate, sees higher price growth. Bank of Canada dismisses data showing homes are overvalued, but uses it for rates. Housing market at high risk of sharp correction. Now that's CMHC, Bank of Canada, and Scotiabank. These are three very credible sources in the mind of consumers. And these are the headlines that people read. If you actually go through these articles, by the way, there's very little weight to them, which is actually what we do at the Real Estate Investment Network, is we help investors cut through this clutter. But the point I'm trying to make is these headlines is what feeds the average consumer. And this is the problem. Okay, this is the problem, and this gives them cold feet. This has them change their mind. This has them be wishy-washy, and this is what creates issues. So from your perspective, as a great agent looking to work with investors, I would get them dialed into a good source of info. Like the Real Estate Investment Network is the best in the country, but have them listen to local experts, not the news. Have them listen to people that are in this space, not the news, not Globe and Mail, not Bloomberg. The crap they publish is just that. It's crap. And it has very little weight behind it. Okay. Now the question becomes, and you've all heard this one, I think, recently, if you work with investors, I can't find cash flow. I can't find cash. Everything is too expensive. I miss the run. How am I ever going to get into real estate? Right. So what I actually want to show you is I want to arm you with a couple of case studies here. and show you how people can create cash flow. And some of you kind of know this stuff. Maybe some of you might find this kind of like, whoa, this is very interesting. There's going to be a ton of good ideas for all of you in here, I think. But you have to teach your customers to create cash flow. Finding cash flow is a misnomer in the real estate space. It doesn't exist. If I can shout that from the rooftops, I would. You're not going to finding cash flow, okay, in the real estate market without creating cash flow, just finding it, just like finding a beautiful, phenomenal property that cash flows like crazy, okay? That's like walking down the beach and hoping you're going to find a gold bar laying around. Like, oh, there's a piece of amazing gold. Let's just pick that up and put it in our pocket. You got to dig for the gold the same way you got to create cash flow. You got to dig for cash flow. You got to create it. The way to do it is by adding value. And this is something you can teach your customers. In fact, you can send them this recording if you want, and this will teach them. I'm happy to make that available to you guys. But you got to add value in a marketplace, or you're not going to create cash flow. And the way to add value is through renovations. Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit about this as we go forward. And I'll give you some case studies to show you real life examples of how this works. Now, first, let's address why renovating makes so much sense. And I need everyone to hear this properly. The average investor does not know this. You might know this, and you might think, well, of course, that makes sense, but they don't know this, right? All the mindset they come into this with is, I'm scared shitless. I'm investing my entire life saving into this, and it better work. That's the thought process of the average investor that's not educated. And there are many that are educated, but there are many that are not. So you need to teach them some of this stuff and why renovation makes so much sense. First and foremost, it improves renter profile. This cannot be overlooked. Newly renovated properties attract the best tenants. And that's actually the difference between enjoying your experience as a landlord or not enjoying your experience as a landlord. Good tenant, good experience. Bad tenant, bad experience. And the quality of the tenant is determined by two things: the location and the quality of the apartment. The location, obviously, you guys should be able to help them with that, but the quality of the apartment is very, very important. And you need to renovate in order to improve your renter profile and attract a good renter profile. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. A second thing is, when you renovate, you actually are going to definitely get higher rents, and you're going to get a higher property value. I'll show you in the case study. And this is often overlooked by investors. They don't know this stuff because they're not in the space like you and I and all of us. But the average investor doesn't know that if let's just say they buy a single family for 600 grand, and they put in a secondary suite in the basement, and that costs them 100 grand. And now they put 600 grand into the property plus 100 grand on the property. So now the property's worth at least 700 grand, maybe more. They could actually refinance and take most of that cash back out of it. And it'll actually cash flow. I'll show you how to run the numbers. But most investors don't know that. So they don't know that by putting extra money in, they only think, I'm putting extra money in and that money's coming out of my pocket, but it's only in temporarily before you take it back out in the refinance. These are things the average investor doesn't know. So renovating means higher rents and higher property values, but not necessarily less cash in your pocket. I'll show you that in a second. The other thing is competition, competing. And this I'm really passionate about these days, because right now, everyone's a genius. I mean, you can buy anything in real estate and you're a genius. And I'll tell you, that won't always be that way. Some of you have been doing this for a long time, and the market never stays the way it is. There's always cycles, there's always waves, there's downturns. And someone who's a genius today might be an idiot tomorrow. And it's important that a newly renovated property helps them compete in the marketplace. Okay, helps them compete in the marketplace. Next is less turnover. This is very rarely considered by investors. They think that that turnover costs nothing. Turnover costs money. The average turnover costs somewhere between $300 to $2,000, depending on whether or not vacancy is included. Even if there's no vacancy in there, it still costs hundreds of dollars for sure, up to $1,000 to turn over an apartment, even if there's no vacancy. Renovated apartments get less turnover. An unrenovated apartment might turn over every 18 to 24 months. A renovated apartment will turn over 3.5 to 4 years, which is actually the perfect amount of time you want a tenant for. 3 to 4 years is the perfect time. Okay, so let's dive in. Any questions so far? I'm kind of like bombarding you here. Is this good? Am I hitting the mark? Yeah, a couple thumbs up. A little bit of a smile there. A little bit of a smile from a few of you. You're not sure. You're not committed yet, eh? You're not ready to commit to this French JG guy yet. I get it. Okay, let's keep going. Now I'm going to teach you a trick. I don't know if you guys use this one. Maybe I think a lot of you have never heard of this one, but I love this one. So this is called, and you got to teach this to your investors. This is called the cash flow zone. Okay, and this is how you're going to quickly calculate whether you should put money into it or not, whether you should even buy it or not. This is a quick measure whether this is even worth your time. And it looks like this. So the cash flow zone is the rent times 12. So the annual rent divided by the purchase price. Okay, so you take the monthly rent times 12 to get the annual rent, and you divide that by the purchase price. Yeah, and you do, it's a percentage, so you do times 100. If the percentage is 0 to 4%, there's no cash flow there. Forget it. By the way, this is not cap rate. Don't confuse this and cap rate. This is called the cash flow zone. If it's 0 to 4%, there's no cash flow there. Don't waste your time. Okay. And don't waste your client's time, frankly. Don't waste your client's time. Next, if it's 5 to 7%, there is some cash flow, especially as you get even between, the closer you get to 7, the better it is for sure. You know, if it was 5.1%, cash flow is going to be pretty tight. If it's like 6.7%, cash flow is going to be good on that, probably. And if it's 7+%, the cash flow is going to be very, very good on that property. Okay. So this is the name of the game. This is actually the name of the game when it comes to real estate investing, is you got to figure out, okay, what I'm buying today, and I'll show you a couple of case studies. What I'm buying today, if I put more money in, does it move my cash flow zone up or does it move it down? And it's a simple calculation I'll show you. So here's a property, downtown Peterborough, 174 McDonald. This is a property we managed and we recently renovated. Here was the numbers before. So before that we did the renovation, it was $1,300 for the upper unit, $1,200 for the lower unit. And so total rent of $2,500. That was a cash flow zone of 7.4%. And my client bought this for 390 grand. That's a good starting cash flow zone. Very, very good. But he wanted to improve it and said, JG, if I put some money into this, if I do what's called a rent ready renovation, which means not a huge investment of dollars, but just spruce it up, right? How do we get this thing so that we can command the maximum rent? How much can we get? And here was the project. Here's how we finished it. It ended up renting $2,300 for the upper, $2,200 for the lower, $4,500 total. So the cash flow zone moved up to 9.3%, and it was reappraised at $575 grand, and it was a $15,000 renovation. This is a home run. Okay. This is a home run. He only invested 15 grand. He brought up his value from 390 to 575. That's what is that? $185,000 for 15 grand. That's phenomenal. Okay. He benefited from COVID because everything raised up in COVID. But even if he would have had to invest $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, would this have been a good deal? Hell yeah. All day long. Now, so that's a good example of like a little bit of money goes a long way. Let me give you another example. This is another property we recently did and we managed. They bought this property, and this is a very classic deal you guys are doing right now. They bought this property for 635 grand. Okay. It was a single family home, and it was a split. It was just like a front split. You come in and you go up 4 stairs and you go, and then down 4 stairs and you have a basement. So this investor calls me in a panic and says, I just bought this property. How much can you rent it for? And I said, well, it's a nice property. I could probably get 3 grand for it. She says, really? Is that it? I said, well, what do you expect? Do you think I'm going to rent this for like $5,000 or $6,000 a month? Or you like, there's only so much you could rent properties for. It's a single family home. I think I can get 3 grand, maybe a little bit more, maybe 32, 33, but you're not going to get 5, 6 grand for this thing. She says, okay, well, what can I do? I said, well, your cash flow zone right now is 5.6%. But if we added a secondary suite in the basement, right, we can probably ask for more. Because now we have 2 apartments instead of 1. That lowers your risk and increases your reward. So we did that. We added a secondary suite in the basement. We completely separated them, did it legally. We do everything legally. That's critical. And the renovation cost $85,000, which is a good chunk of change. But the property moved up to $715,000. And now instead of generating $3,000 a month, she generated almost $4,700 a month in rent. That's a 7.8% cash flow zone. So these are 2 good examples. And this was a very pretty significant project for her. This was her first real estate deal, by the way. So it's a pretty significant, project for people. But this kind of adding value, densification, this is what you got to do to be successful in this market. You're not going to pick up gold on the street. So in this case, what did this actually cost her? It actually didn't cost her anything. She had to put in a little bit of cash temporarily, but she ended up refinancing and getting the bulk of that cash out. And in the end, now she's got a property that's generated more cash flow than before. She has a property that is safer, and that's really important. And why is it safer? Because instead of having 1 door to generate revenue, she's now got 2 doors to generate revenue. That's a safer bet. And she's got a more valuable property that now her appreciation of 3%, 5%, 7% per year is not 3% or 5% of $635,000. It's 5% of $715,000. So her appreciation and her compound growth on appreciation is actually better too. So this is a triple win for this client, but she didn't know. She didn't know that she could do this. Okay. Any questions on this? All right, I'll show you guys another example. Pat, you might remember this deal. So this is another example. And this is, and I'm giving you this example for a couple of reasons. One, to show you what a huge project looks like, which appears like a complete disaster. We love these projects at Visture. This is our specialty, is doing these kinds of projects. So this is on Park Hill. So we bought this property. As you could see, it was boarded up. It had a lot of challenges to it. It had fires in it. It wasn't good. It had orders against it, but this was the view. Beautiful view, absolutely stunning. So we got to work and we started tearing it apart. And we debated whether we should knock it down completely and start over and build a brand new home, which we do often, or whether we should just rebuild it. And our numbers showed us that we should keep the shell and rebuild it instead. And so that's what we started with. There's Mr. McCauley there. Remember that, Pat? It was freezing. It was like minus 35. Man, our fingers were frozen, but we were in there. And when we took it apart, I don't think I ever showed you these pictures, Pat, but there was actually no more floor to it. I mean, the floor was completely rotted away. There was nothing left. And this is quote unquote, and the reason I'm showing you this is like a nightmare for most people. For us at Visture, it's everyday business. But for most people, they would have just freaked out by this. And I'll show you why it's not that big a deal in the end. In the moment, it feels like a big deal, but you can educate your clients that in the end, it's going to be okay. So we got through everything we got through. We rebuilt the floor. We spray foamed the entire lower. We spray foamed the whole house. We had to, because otherwise it was going to fall apart. And turned out to be an incredible, incredible build. This was the finished product. We split it. It was a single family home. We made it into a single family home with an accessory suite legally, which means 2 units. So we did a 1-bedroom apartment on top. That's the 1-bedroom on top. That's the kitchen. We did a nice little fireplace in there. There's a bedroom. There's in-suite laundry. Pretty incredible. Downstairs, we did a 2-bedroom plus den. Huge open concept. Very, very nice. Look at it. Beautiful fireplace, the whole thing. Looking onto the river. Absolutely stunning and gorgeous. But here's why I want to show you this. I'm just revealing all the numbers here so that you can use these numbers with your clients. So our plan was to reconstruct it and redevelop this property. And that's exactly what we did. So when we were all said and done, we bought this thing for 160. It was obviously a tear down. It was just land value at that point. This is a couple of years ago, by the way, before COVID. When we rebuilt it, the after repair value was $500K and it cost us $200,000 to renovate. So run those numbers now. If you're taking notes, 160 plus 200 is 360, and 500K on a reappraisal. If you take out 80% LTV or 75% loan to value, you're essentially at 360K. So in the end, this property from one perspective, it was actually free. Think about that, right? Because of the appreciation in the property, because of the after repair value in the property, it actually turned out to be a fantastic deal. It added 2 rental units to the rental stock of Peterborough, which is fantastic. They're brand new. They're fully renovated. We got some phenomenal tenants, and the building actually generates $700 a month in net positive cash flow. So win-win-win. In the end, took us a full year to do the project, by the way, a full year, and cost $200,000. But these are the kinds of projects that investors can take on if they have if they have a team that they trust. You as a realtor, maybe Visture Property Group as the construction, as a property management company and construction arm of this, perhaps. But these kinds of deals for investors are often good, and a lot of new investors would definitely shy away from this. So I wanted to give you guys that as an example. Okay, let me start to wrap this up so you guys can ask questions if you have any. So let's talk about game plan design. Okay, one of the, if your client is entertaining a renovation, okay, this is a bit of a game plan that they need to follow in order to accurately, because one of the biggest mistakes your client is going to make is they're going to over renovate. They're going to spend too much money and they're going to over renovate, and then they're not going to get their money back out. And that's a classic investor mistake. And the way to not do that is to follow this game plan design. One of the things you want to do is you want to analyze your renter profile right from the get-go. And this is where you can help them with this. They need to know what kind of renter they're attracting for their property. And we divide renters in 4 categories: luxury, premium, lifers, and low income. Let me give you an example, because you guys is everybody pretty familiar with Peterborough here? Yeah, pretty much. So luxury would be hardwood everything, granite or stone or marble countertops, $400 toilets, full walk-in shower with brass hardware, and you're renting in the 3,000 plus range. That's a luxury client. There aren't many of those in Peterborough. Okay, I don't recommend those very much. Some people play in the space. There's a couple investors here in town. Some of you may know that's the only space they play in. But the reason that luxury is not a great market is it's a very small market. There's not a lot of tenants that can afford that. And as a result, you're really limiting your pool. And when I limit my pool of renters, I actually increase my risk. I don't like that. So luxury is a place to play. I don't play in it. Visture Property Group typically doesn't play in it, but it is a place to play. The second one is called what we call premium. Now, premium is the place where Visture plays. This is my favorite place. And premium is above market rent. And it's got all beautiful finishes, but nothing over the top. So you're going to have premium countertops, but it's not going to be stone. You're going to have premium taps. You're going to have premium vanities. You're going to have good toilets, but it's not $400 toilets. It's a good dual flusher, 16.5 inches off the floor, extra high, extra elongated toilet, but it's not a $400, total toilet. Flooring, you're going to go with a nice luxury vinyl plank that feels great on the feet, that's nice and warm, but you're not going to overdo it on the floors. That kind of stuff. Where you get your premium tenants is typically in the amenities and typically in the kind of like the coolness and the cool factor of your apartment. So I'm going to splurge a little bit more on my lighting fixtures. I'm not going to spend $1,000 a lighting fixture, but I'm also not going to install the $26 boob light from Home Depot. You know what I'm talking about? We hate those, right? So don't do that if you want premium tenants. So that's kind of the quality there. And premium, the way you know premium is if you go to Zumper is a good example. where you get the average market for a average rent for a 2-bedroom or average rent for a 3-bedroom, you're probably going to be about $200 above that, probably about 20-25% above the average. That's premium. Then you have lifers, and lifers are people that pay their rent on time. They're good tenants. They pay their rent on time. They have jobs. They're awesome, but they're going to probably be there forever. And those typically lifers usually gravitate to bigger buildings, 8-plex, 10-plex, 12-plex, 20-plex. And there's lots of buildings around Peterborough where, you'll see that kind of tenant. Great tenants, that's a very, very bare bones finish. You don't need any frills for that because frankly, they don't have any other option other than renting. And also you don't want to raise the rent too high because then they won't be able to afford it. And then you're going to have a bad tenant. Then you're going to have to evict them. Then you're going to spend a bunch of money evicting people. So not a good idea. So keep your finishes low and keep them in check so you can keep the rent in check as well. Make sense? And then there's the last category, which is low income. Low income is exactly what it means. This is the category, call this slumlording, if you will. Visture Property Group, we do not dabble in this at all. Zero. If someone comes to me with a low income property and says, "Here, I'll pay you $1 million to manage this," I would tell them no, because we are not in this game. We don't touch this game at all. There are other managers in town that will play that. We don't play that. It's not a game we want to play, and I don't recommend it for investors. I just don't recommend it. But there are a lot of cool, I will say this on that note though, there are a lot of cool low income projects that are taking place right now. And I really like those projects. And we're getting involved with some of the new development on low income to try to help this category. But the category of slumlording is not, doesn't resonate with Visture. So those are the 4 categories of renters. Once they figure out where they're going to go, and one of the big mistakes, and this is great for you guys as agents, one of the big mistakes, and the investor will not know this, but you will know this. They will want to go higher than they can, okay? They're going to want a premium tenant, but their location can't afford a premium tenant. So, and I get this all the time from investors from Toronto, Durham. They come up here, they say, "Listen, I want to rent this place. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll renovate it, but I want to rent this 2-bedroom for $2,500, but it's on McDonald, near the, like it's not going to happen. There's no point. I mean, you can do all the renovations you want. People don't want to pay that much in that neighborhood. So there's a harmony to be found between the renovations and the location. You guys can help them with the location and the renovations. Then the next question is max rent. What can you maximize your rent at? And this is kind of what I was just alluding to. Often a mistake is people think, "Oh, I can rent this for $2,800, but they can't. I mean, their heads in the weeds. And the best thing to do, and I'll advise all of you as well, is call us. Give us a call and I'll tell you what they can rent that thing for. And I'll tell you, if you tell me they want to attract a premium property, a premium tenant, I'll look up their location. I'll say, yeah, I think they can attract that kind of tenant. And here's the max they can ask for their rent most likely. Then you have a good number on what max rent can be. Don't let them determine the max rent because they're always going to overshoot it most often. Okay. So once you figure those things out, then you can make decisions on renovations. You can make decisions on where you're going to take this property in the marketplace. And that's a great way to go. Okay. Any questions on this before I move on to the last part?
Just one question, JG. Are you noticing at all that with the prices of houses going up so much that maybe you start running into a spot where the market of rentals is softening only because certain people can't afford it anymore?
Yeah, 100%, 100%, Pat. So the answer is yes. And this is actually funny enough, is we're actually going through a bit of that period right now where in every market, when prices appreciate as much as they have, there's a bit of an adjustment period where people still have the old price in mind, so they're not quite willing to pay the new price. And there's this adjustment period. We're actually going through that right now. It's been happening all of October and into November. But yes, that does happen, Pat, for sure. And there's also a point. Here's where I think this is going, though, and I didn't really touch on this yet, so it's a great time to do it. As an investor, and as your investors that are going to buy your properties, because we are going further and further towards a nation of renters, and because interest rates are only going in one direction, and that's up. We don't expect them to go up a lot, but they are going to go up because they can't really go down. Okay. Well, what that's going to do is it's going to make it more and more difficult for people to afford. It's already the hardest it's ever been to buy a house, ever, by far. And it's only going to get harder. So when people can't buy, what do? They have to rent. I mean, people got to live somewhere. So as a result, Pat, I think what's going to happen is that's the adjustment period we're happening in, where people are saying, man, I could buy a place. And you've all heard that shit. Most of you have said that yourselves. I could buy a place for the amount I'm renting this place for. But the fact is because of the laws and because of the banks and because of all the stuff they've done, they actually can't buy a place. Plus, there's no supply. There's very limited supply. So they actually can't buy a place. So they're forced to go rent. That brings a higher quality tenant into the marketplace, which is a good thing for us investors. So that's where that's going, Pat. Does that answer the question? Thumbs up to that. Okay, great. So the last portion, I guess I'll touch on, and feel free to drop any questions in the chat, gang, or unmute yourself and ask the question if you want. I'm either way is cool with me. But the last thing is to tell your clients is that managing mistakes cost money, and the average investor, unless they've taken a course, unless they've been trained, especially by the Real Estate Investment Network, they do not realize how much management mistakes cost them money, and how much management, like professional management, and this is kind of a shameless plug for Visture, but it's also, keep in mind, I'm an investor first. I own a property management company, but I'm an investor first. So I'm speaking to you from an investor perspective, which is a good management company shouldn't cost you a penny. They should make you money. Okay. And here's why. So, first of all, the average investor always rents their place below market. And when they do, it typically costs them, in our research, somewhere between $1,200 to $2,000 per year. Oftentimes, they don't do the same checks we do on tenants, and they choose the wrong tenant. Removing a tenant in Ontario is a $3,000 to $8,000 process. That does not include any lost rent. That's only the physical cost of getting them out through the LTB or whatever reason, if you end up with a challenging situation. Oftentimes, they're going to hire the wrong contractors. That's going to cost them somewhere between $1,000 and $5,000. If they lose a good tenant, and this happens all the time to average investors, where they lose a tenant because they don't know how to take care of tenants. They don't know how to properly care for them. They don't know how to service them. They don't know how to answer their questions well. And as a result, they lose a really great tenant. That costs money. That's $1,200 to $2,500 every time it happens. Not to mention the time, the effort, and the opportunity cost of missing deals. And that's probably the biggest thing for you guys as agents to tell your customers. As an investor, they shouldn't worry about management. They should only worry about growing their net worth. They should only worry about growing their portfolio. And the way to do that is to work with you guys, not to worry about tenants and toilets and sticks and bricks. Leave that to managers. You focus on, on your investment. The other thing is that it's incredibly frustrating for people who don't know how to professionally manage. It's incredibly frustrating to deal with all these tenant issues. When for us, it's just normal everyday business. I mean, we do this day in and day out. We have a team of 12 plus that handle this. It's every day for us. So what's challenging for them is normal for us. Now, the other thing is they don't follow a management system. It ends up costing them money. So the point there, folks, is that this is something I tell investors all the time. As an investor, make sure you get yourself professional management, or learn to do it well yourself. Keep in mind, I really like, at Visture Property Management, if you want to manage it yourself, awesome. I actually offer a course on our website for free where we teach landlords how to manage their own properties without hiring us. So, but just follow a process, and I teach them that process. So, by the way, you can send your clients there if you want. It's free. It's on our website, visture.ca. Patricia asks, what about investors looking to rent to students, especially here in Peterborough with Trent and Fleming? Do they fit into lifers category? Does Visture deal with these investors? Patricia, great question. Several components to this question. The first thing is there's two different types of student rentals. The first one is where you have a property and you rent to students, which means you have a 3-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, a house, some property, and your profile is students. By the way, I'm glad you brought that up because it wasn't in my 4 profiles I gave you. It's its own profile, students. They don't fit into lifers. It's just a student profile. That's its own profile. But it's a great question, Patricia. And yes, we can help. We have lots of rentals where we target students, and that's awesome. I'll tell you what I don't do, and I tell you what I don't like. And I do not like student rentals where you take a single family house and you cram 8 or 9 or 10 bedrooms in there and you rent it exclusively to students. I understand that that's a cash flow model that some people like to follow. I don't like it, and I don't manage those. And I don't recommend those for investors either, because they're very risky. And when they work, the cash flow could be good, but they don't always work. And quite frankly, they look good on paper, but they rarely turn out as good as as people think. And I really don't recommend them for investors, and I don't do them as managers. Great question. For you. Oh, wonderful. Paul asked a great question. What are your views on rural investment properties? Paul, I think rural investment properties are going to get nothing but better and better and better. But I will tell you this. And Paul, I don't know if you're asking me for yourself or if you're asking me for a client of yours, but I will tell you this. As an investor, okay, and I'll actually combine it with this next slide. The average investor buys 4 to 6 properties. That's good news for you guys. You're going to sell them lots of property. So that's good news. Yes, they are a pain in the ass for you. Yeah, you could admit it. It's okay. We know we're a pain in the ass for you as an agent, but we buy more property than the average person. That's 4 to 6 properties plus personal residence or 2 on top of that. So, you've got a very valuable client there in a real estate investor. Back to your question, Paul. What are the views on rural investment properties? The first 3 properties as an investor are critical. If I was an investor, I would not buy a rural property on my first 1, 2, or 3, especially not my first 1 or 2, depending on how much property I was looking to buy. Rural properties require deeper pockets for the simple fact that your tenant pool is not nearly as big as an in-town property. And as a result, Paul, what ends up happening is you end up vacant for longer. So you just need deeper pockets to be able to cash flow it along the way. I do think rural properties and the wave you saw in COVID, how they became more popular, I don't think that's going away. I think that's only going to continue. And I think so I like rural properties. I'm actually building a rural property right now. That's an investment property. One, maybe 2 of them we're doing right now. So I love it, Paul. That's my answer to that. Does your company offer commercial property management? If so, do you offer a course for this? Jose, we don't offer a course for this. We do offer some commercial property management services, but we are a little bit picky on which type of commercial it is, because there's so many different types of commercial. And all we ask is to see the leases. Is it a triple net lease? What's the structure on it? But yes, it is something we can help with, Jose. Good question. How long does it take to legalize an accessory apartment? Oh, Pat. I think that's Pat. Yeah, good question. Or Tammy asked this. Tammy, great question. The answer is from start to finish, if you're fast and if you're good, 4 to 6 months minimum. And that depends on how much renovation it takes. Okay. I actually have a course on our website called a Rent Ready Renovation, where it gives an idea of timelines, how long to get your design, how long to get your drawings, how long to get your permit, how long to get your renovation done. It takes 4 to 6 months if you're good and if you're fast. That's what it takes us at Visture Property Management. The average person who tries to take it on themselves typically takes them 12 months. 12 months. Okay, good question. Oh, let me see, how much time do I got? Well, I'm out of time. This is great. Hopefully it's been good for you guys. Let me just do this. So how can we help is a common question. So I'll tell you about Visture Property Group and Visture Property Management in a second and how we can help. For the real estate investment network, which I'm involved in, if you have an investor who wants to learn how to invest, they want the steps to success. We offer a course at RAIN Real Estate Investment Network called the 15 Steps to Real Estate Success. We have a membership program. Some of you may have heard of the Real Estate Investment Network. They've been around for 29 years. You can send them to RAINcanada.com, REIN Canada.com. There's courses, there's webinars, we educate tens of thousands of people every single year. So there's lots of resources and tons of free resources for them, and some paid resources and some coaching and all that kind of stuff. So if you have a client who wants to learn how, and they're sucking all the time out of you because they want you to teach them, and you're like, dude, I'm just here I'm here to sell real estate. I'm not, I'm here to help you. I'm not here to educate you. Send them to RAIN, the Real Estate Investment Network. That's the best place for them. And then for Visture Property Group, Mark, great question. I'll answer that in a second. For Visture Property Group, so we offer the following things. First of all, we offer full service turnkey management in Peterborough, Lindsay, Aurelia, and Huntsville, which means the owner has nothing to do except turn over the keys to us. We rent it. We do the inspections. We do move-in inspections, move-out inspections. We do biannual inspections. We do the maintenance. We do absolutely everything. And we charge a fixed fee of 10% of rent. There's a couple of things that are different about Visture. The first thing is, if something happens and your tenant doesn't pay rent for whatever reason, you don't pay unless we collect the rent. Okay, so it's 10% of rent collected. Most property management companies do a certain percentage, but whether they collect the rent or not, they charge you. Which I don't think is right. I don't think is fair. So we only charge 10% of rent collected. The second thing, and this is the biggest thing, we include the marketing and we include leasing as part of that 10%. So you're going to have other companies in town, they'll charge 8%, but then they'll charge a month of rent on top of that to go lease your apartment. The problem I have with that model is that, and I get why they do it, but the problem I have with that model is I'm not incentivized. If I charge like that, I'm actually not incentivized to get you a good tenant. I'm actually incentivized to get you a shitty tenant so that I can just get a new tenant every single year for you. So we include in our 10%, we actually include finding you a tenant for free. So overall, if you calculate everything, our fees are actually better than most. So that's that. And it includes absolutely everything. We just literally drop the money in your account every single month. You got nothing to do as an investor, as an owner. So that's that. We also offer construction and renovation services. We do not renovate or construct or do anything other than for investors. So we'll do a renovation for an investor in an apartment. We won't swap out your kitchen for a nicer kitchen in your personal residence. We're not for hire renovators. We help investors renovate their places. We specialize in conversions, duplex conversions, secondary home conversions, turning a single family into a triplex, that kind of stuff. We're specialists in that. So all that. Also marketing. Sometimes the tenants say, listen, I'll tell you what, I want to manage my own property because I want to keep on top of it. But can you go find me a great tenant and lease it up for me? We do that. We charge 1 month of rent, and we can help people with that anywhere in Canada. We also offer virtual staging. You can get that right off our website. Staging a house to sell it makes a lot of sense, like physically staging it. Physically staging an apartment to rent it is very cost prohibitive. Very cost prohibitive. It's very expensive. We do a thing called virtual staging. It's absolutely awesome. Go on our website, visture.ca, visture.ca, and you'll see some before and afters with virtual staging. You have no idea. You would think it's actually physically staged. It's really, really well done. It's really cool. We also offer paralegal services. You don't have to be one of our customers to help you with paralegal. We do this as a benefit to investors and a benefit to the community. If people need help with paralegal services, we have a full-time paralegal on our payroll, so we can help with that. So you may have an investor who's stuck. They don't know how to evict their tenant. There's a problem. They need help with negotiation, whatever the case may be. We can help with that. And the last and final thing, as Pat knows, is we buy value-added properties. If there's any property that you cannot sell on the market, don't want to sell on the market, have a problem, it's, we'll buy it. Anything that's got to be torn down, the worse shape it's in, the better, the more we love it, right? Our tagline internally is mold is gold. So, all of that stuff, any property like that, if you have someone who says, listen, I want to sell this thing, but I don't want to put it on the open market for whatever reason, just give us a call. We're happy to take a look at it. We do a lot of those kinds of deals.